Okay, let's unpack this. If you, like us, scrolled through the headlines today, June 5th, 2025, and just felt that wave of, whoa, that's a
Oh,
lot.
yeah.
You were absolutely not alone. It felt like information overload, right? Just so much
It
happening.
really did. You've got this, shocking political drama over here, confusing economic numbers there, conflict still ongoing, privacy stuff.
Yeah.
It's all jostling for attention.
Right. Hard to know where to even start, let alone what actually matters.
Exactly.
And that's kind of our mission here. We've taken the stack of sources you share, the news, the analysis, the commentary, and we're doing a deep dive.
Hmm.
Goal is cut through the noise, pull out the key nuggets, maybe connect some dots that aren't obvious, and help you figure out what was really significant about today.
And it's a really rich mix of material today. You've got straight reporting, you've got expert takes, some pretty strong opinions, too. It gives us a pretty full picture of the complexity.
And yeah, running through it all, we've got some major threads we're going to pull on. We're talking about a genuinely explosive public feud between two very prominent figures,
Huge figures.
economic signals that seem to be yelling conflicting things at us, serious ongoing global conflicts, shifting dynamics there, and these persistent, maybe growing questions about privacy in a world where data is just everywhere.
It's like a snapshot of a world trying to make sense of a lot of competing forces, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's dive in.
All right, let's jump right into the spectacle. The thing that grabbed a ton of headlines today, the sudden, really dramatic public breakdown between President Trump and Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Sources are calling it a stunning war of words, an explosive feud.
Collapse of an alliance. I saw that one too. It really just unfolded right out in public today, didn't it?
Totally. It started with Musk taking aim, like, directly at the president's budget bill.
Yep. He went on his platform X and just flat out said, kill the bill, called it a disgusting abomination, claimed it would add, what, $2.5 trillion to the debt.
Wow. Pretty strong stuff.
No. Very strong.
And President Trump's response, equally direct, fired right back, said Musk was wearing thin and I asked him to leave his advisory circle.
And then he accused Musk of being purely motivated by self-interest.
Yeah.
Specifically because the bill apparently cut electric vehicle tax credits.
Right. Credits that benefit Tesla owners, obviously.
Obviously. And Trump insisted Musk knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody and was totally fine with it until that EV credit was cut.
And then this really specific and frankly kind of bizarre detail. Trump mentioned offering Musk makeup in the Oval Office because Musk had a black eye.
I know. You can't make this stuff up sometimes.
Seriously. Meanwhile, Musk wasn't exactly backing down online either. He launched his own counterattack, claimed Trump would have lost the election without him.
And he threw out a number too, didn't he? Like over $288 million he apparently spent to help Trump's election?
That's the number, yeah. Huge. And then he doubled down with an even bigger claim, suggesting Trump is in the Epstein files, and that this is the real reason those files haven't been made public.
I mean, that is quite an accusation to throw out there publicly.
And he also directly contradicted Trump about knowing the bill's details, posted just false, and said, it was never shown to me even once.
So yeah, it got deeply personal, incredibly fast. Trump kept framing Musk as a disgruntled former employee, someone who gets hostile after they leave and the glamour's gone.
He said he was very disappointed, mentioned he'd help Elon a lot.
Right. Now, the commentary on this whole thing is fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it goes beyond just, reporting the back and forth.
Totally. Some observers are calling it delicious, but basically a distracting reality show, a circus.
Yeah, they're framing it as a smokescreen. Like, this big flashy fight distracts everyone, well, maybe Trump's real agenda. Things like reported tax cuts for the oligarchs in that same budget bill, or even talk of an AI ban gets pushed through kind of quietly.
There's some seriously blunt language in the commentary, too. Descriptions like toddler bullies, mega egos, narcissists.
Suggesting it's all driven by revenge, not logic or policy.
Exactly. And that's where the real concern comes in for some commentators, that this, food fight among billionaires
Right.
is diverting attention from the actual potential consequences of that budget bill, which some sources warn could lead to, well, death, misery, and suffering for millions through cuts to social programs.
It puts the whole spectacle in a different light, doesn't it?
It really does. What's also striking, according to some analysis, is that this public clash, especially with someone who is a supporter, it might suggest Trump isn't quite as invincible to criticism as some think.
Interesting point. They mentioned others like Xi and Putin have also publicly pushed back against him recently.
Yeah, and the idea is this kind of public humiliation, especially from a former ally like Musk, could potentially cause him to meltdown, as one source put it.
So definitely more layers there than just a Twitter spat. Highlights how high-profile drama can be both the story and potentially diversion tactic.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. From that high-profile drama to some pretty significant U.S. policy and domestic concerns that were prominent in the sources today.
Right. A big one was the president's new travel ban. It actually took effect on Monday, but it's still very much being discussed. It affects 19 countries, 12 banned outright, 7 others with heavy restrictions.
And the official reason, the rationale from the White House and Trump himself, pointed to the recent terror attack in Boulder, Colorado, and the supposed danger from foreign nationals who are not properly vetted or people who overstay their visas.
But on the flip side, groups like Amnesty International immediately condemned it, calling it discriminatory, racist, and downright cruel.
And you can bet it's already facing legal challenges, right?
For sure. Almost certainly.
We saw a really stark example highlighted today, too. An 18-year-old high school student born in Brazil, lives here since he was 7, arrested by ICE immigration and customs enforcement, just driving to volleyball practice.
Yeah, apparently they were looking for his father, who wasn't even in the car.
Yeah.
But they detained the teen anyway, based on his birth country.
Just wow. Thankfully, he was released on bond, reportedly thanked his community for the support.
It really puts a human face on the enforcement side of these policies, doesn't it?
Definitely. And tying back to the president's stated reason for the ban Boulder, there was an update on that today. The suspect in that firebombing attack targeting Jewish demonstrators, formally charged.
Yeah, 118 state counts, including 28 counts of attempted murder. Authorities are saying he planned it for over a year, used Molotov cocktails, injured 15 people.
And he's identified as an Egyptian national who allegedly overstayed his tourist visa. His wife and 5 kids are reportedly in ICE custody too, though a judge temporarily blocked their deportation.
So these situations just really underscore that tension between national security arguments and the very real impacts on individuals, families, and concerns about civil liberties.
Yeah, and that thread government authority, citizen rights, it runs through several other stories today.
It does. There are these significant concerns being raised about data acquisition, potential surveillance. Sources mentioned companies like Palantir,
Right.
in the context of DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, potentially creating a master database of Americans' data, combining databases that used to be separate.
Which commentary immediately called Orwellian, raising fears about the government tracking Americans, maybe even viewing some as political enemies.
One source specifically focused on concerns around stolen and/or misused California data, and noted that the landscape of state privacy laws is growing. Apparently, over 40% of U.S. consumers now have rights under state laws as of this month.
Which is interesting in itself. And then there was that really startling report from Democracy Now! About an incident in Congressman Jerry Nadler's office in Manhattan.
Oh yeah, that was wild. DHS agents reportedly went into the office, handcuffed and detained a staffer.
Handcuffed a congressional staffer.
Yeah, claiming they were looking for protesters and accusing aides of harboring rioters.
But apparently the staffer had just invited 2 protesters who were observing a court thing outside into the office.
Right. And the report stressed the agents didn't have a warrant. Congressman Nadler basically said they had no right to come in, disregarded the separation of powers. Huge deal.
Wow. That plus the Newark mayor suing masked federal agents over his arrest outside an ICE jail. It really highlights these major friction points around federal authority, transparency, civil liberties right here.
Absolutely.
Speaking of legal systems, a few other quick but important legal snippets today. In El Salvador, a court ordered an anti-corruption lawyer, Ruth Lopez, jailed for 6 months before her trial.
On charges she says are totally trumped up. She was reportedly shouting, "I want a public trial," as they took her away.
Grim. Also, a Malta court convicted 2 accessories in the murder of that journalist, Daphne Caruana Galizia. That felt like a step, at least.
Yeah, important progress there. And the U.S. Supreme Court blocked Mexico's big lawsuit against U.S. gun manufacturers.
Right, the $10 billion suit.
Yeah.
Elsewhere domestically, big fire at a Philly bus depot, 40 buses destroyed, 15 electric.
An American Airlines engine fire, possibly human error.
Yeah.
And a really scary lightning strike near a little girl, 6 years old, in California.
Just awful. Plus, those air quality alerts are still going across a huge part of the country, Nebraska to New York.
Still the Canadian wildfires and pollution. And severe storms forecasted too. Busy day domestically.
Okay, let's try to make sense of the economy. Because the signals today were definitely, well, a mixed bag is putting it mildly.
They really were. That assessment from the San Francisco Fed, their SF Fed views, use that exact word, mixed.
Right. So inflation, they note it's generally been easing towards the Fed's 2% goal. April headline was 2.2%, core 2.5%.
Okay. But, and this is the kicker, they actually expect inflation to rise notably over the next 2 to 3 quarters.
Rise notably after all this easing. Why?
They point specifically to higher tariff rates, pushing up input costs, pushing up final prices. They think progress towards 2% will resume next year, but the path is uncertain. Depends on trade policy adjustments.
Okay, so tariffs messing with the inflation picture. Then you've got this weird split in expectations. Household expectations, like what regular people think, have increased sharply recently.
Yeah, the Michigan surveys show people are feeling nervous, expecting prices to go up faster.
But market-based measures, like TIPS, Treasury, inflation-protected securities, what investors are betting on, they're still subdued, consistent with the 2% goal.
Exactly. So the public is worried, but the financial markets aren't showing that same level of fear, at least not yet.
Weird divergence. And economists love talking about hard data versus soft data, right? The Fed report highlights this too.
It does. The hard data, actual numbers like GDP growth, consumer spending, jobs, that remains mostly solid. Core GDP growth steady around 3%. Payroll jobs still adding about 190K a month. Unemployment 4.2%. Solid.
Okay, looks good on paper. But the soft data sentiment, uncertainty from surveys, that has deteriorated significantly.
Right. The Economic Policy Uncertainty Index spiked to its highest level on record back in April, and it's still quite elevated.
And that divergence is key, isn't it? It raises risks of an economic slowdown ahead.
Precisely. Even if today's numbers look okay, that high uncertainty suggests businesses, consumers, they might pull back, and that could lead to a slowdown down the road.
Financial markets also described as volatile. Though the S&P 500 did bounce back recently, close to where it started the year, maybe that helped sentiment a bit.
Could do.
Yeah.
But the indicators specifically trying to predict recession risk, also mixed.
Of course they are.
The survey of professional forecasters saw the probability of a GDP decline jump significantly, up to 37% in May. And they note that pattern often preceded past recessions. So that's worrying.
Okay, that's bad.
But other indicators, like the SAM rule, which looks at unemployment changes or the yield curve spread, they are currently not signaling a recession.
So confusing. You've got solid current numbers, nervous sentiment, clashing inflation expectations, disagreeing recession indicators.
Yeah. It makes figuring out the path forward really, really complicated.
Separately, we also saw that new Treasury report on currency practices of trading partners. The Trump administration's stance is pretty clear. Unfair practices hurt manufacturing, contribute to deficits, they won't accept it.
But the report's formal conclusion, no major trading partner manipulated currency through December 2024.
Okay,
But 9 economies are on a monitoring list, and China got singled out for a lack of transparency around its exchange rate policies.
Okay, so leaving the door open there.
Pretty much. Treasury said this won't preclude designating China later if evidence shows up. The secretary said they'll use all available tools, strong countermeasures, remain vigilant. Standard tough talk.
Gotcha. And just looping back briefly to the budget bill and the political stuff we talked about earlier, some sources were suggesting that bill includes significant tax cuts for the oligarchs.
Yeah, implying the richest Americans get big cuts, while potentially cutting programs like Medicaid and SNAP, food stamps.
So the economic picture today. Complex baseline data, lots of flashing warning lights from surveys, conflicting inflation views, big policy debates on trade, and taxes swirling around. Yeah, definitely mixed.
Okay, let's shift our focus internationally now. Conflicts and geopolitics. Today brought a lot of intense news from around the world.
Starting with Ukraine, the situation remains just absolutely brutal. Russian drone strikes, bombs, reportedly killed at least 5 people today, including a 1-year-old child.
Yeah, and injured over 40 others across cities like Pryluki, Kherson, Kharkiv, just awful.
And this comes after Ukraine's recent drone strikes deep inside Russia, right? Which reportedly destroyed at least 10 Russian warplanes.
Including some nuclear-capable bombers, yeah.
And we heard Martha Ratitz and her team were in a bunker in Kyiv today because of air raid alerts. Just gives you a sense of that daily reality.
And then politically, a really notable comment from President Trump. He campaigned saying he'd end the war on day 1.
But today said, sometimes you're better off letting them fight for a while, comparing it to 2 kids fighting.
Yeah. A comparison that a lot of people are finding Jarring,
Yeah.
given the scale of death and destruction.
Definitely stands in stark contrast to the German chancellor. He was with Trump today, stated very clearly, Germany is on the side of Ukraine.
And the chancellor pointed out that fundamental difference. Russia attacking civilians, infrastructure, while Ukraine is targeting military sites. A clear distinction.
Also reported today, another Ukrainian attack on the Kerch Bridge, underwater explosives, briefly stopped traffic. That's the third attack on that bridge, right?
Third one, yeah. Shows their persistence targeting that critical link.
Okay, shifting to Gaza and the wider regional tensions. A major diplomatic move today. The U.S. vetoed another UN Security Council resolution.
Another one. This one called for an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire.
And the vote was 14-1. Everyone else, including the other permanent members, supported it.
That's right. Just the U.S. veto. The Palestinian UN ambassador's response, highlighted in the sources, stressed the resolution was about ending the humanitarian catastrophe, what he called genocide, getting hostages and prisoners released, and Israeli forces out.
And just hours after that veto, reports that Israel attacked the Al-Ali hospital in Gaza City again, for the 8th time.
Killing 3 Palestinian journalists, wounding a 4th. Just relentless.
And the killings during aid distribution, that's still a major story. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation suspended operations after over 100 Palestinians were reportedly shot dead seeking aid.
There was that survivor's quote, "We only wanted to feed our children." Just heartbreaking desperation.
And CNN apparently did an investigation backing eyewitness reports that Israeli troops did open fire near an aid site, contradicting Israeli denials about those specific deaths.
Meanwhile, the bodies of 2 Israeli Americans killed back on October 7th were recovered in southern Gaza.
And protests are ongoing, right, outside the region.
Yep. Sources mentioned doctors arrested in the Senate, veterans and peace activists on hunger strike at the UN, a big protest in London, all demanding action to stop the genocide and stop arming a genocide.
Okay, shifting focus slightly. Yemen. Human Rights Watch put out a report calling for an investigation into a U.S. bombing back in April, an oil port.
April 17th, yeah. They report 84 people killed, including 49 port workers, 3 children, over 150 wounded. HRW said the strike showed a callous disregard for civilians' lives. Strong words.
Definitely. Okay, let's look at Iran. Nuclear program, global standing. Iran's supreme leader has rejected a key demand from the Trump administration's proposed nuclear deal.
Right. He insists Iran must be allowed to continue enriching uranium for peaceful purposes. Says a temporary allowance is unacceptable because they need domestic fuel production. Seems like a potential deal breaker.
And the Institute for the Study of War, ISW, had some analysis suggesting Russia's trying to position itself as a mediator in U.S.-Iran talks.
Yeah, but ISW assesses that's unlikely to secure U.S. interests, just given how aligned Russia and Iran are.
ISW also estimated Iran now has enough 60% enriched uranium to make nearly 10 nuclear weapons if they enriched it further.
That's a significant stockpile, a real concern.
And Iran is actively working to get around international sanctions, right? Using groups like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
Exactly. Calling for joint action against sanctions, using alternative financial tools like BRICS Pay, trading in national currencies, even proposing a joint bank for SKO members to rely less on Western systems.
Sources are framing this as Iran trying to build a kind of parallel international order, pushing back against Western dominance and U.S. unilateralism.
And their military commanders are apparently prepping for potential U.S. or Israeli strikes, inspecting air defense sites recently, including one near Tehran that might have been hit by Israel last October.
Okay, other regional dynamics. Reports today that Syria and Lebanon are dismantling likely Iranian-linked weapons smuggling networks near their border.
Yeah, intercepting Cornet missiles, closing illegal crossings. Interesting development there.
And separately, the EU is giving a big grant, 175 million euros, to the Syrian transitional government for projects.
Follows the lifting of EU sanctions. An EU commissioner actually visited Damascus recently, the first since that transitional government formed back in March, so maybe some cautious re-engagement there.
In Iraq, the main Shia political bloc reportedly agreed to amend the electoral law before the November elections. Sources suggest the changes might favor their parties.
Little adjustments that can have big impacts. And finally, the Houthis apparently launched a drone at Ben Gurion Airport in Israel on June 4th. It was intercepted, but some airlines have now suspended flights through September because of it.
So just a really dense, intense day internationally. Ukraine, Gaza, Iran, shifting alliances, nuclear worries, regional power plays. It's a lot.
Definitely. Before we wrap up, though, just a few lighter notes from today's sources.
Please. Need a breather. For the gamers listening, the new Nintendo Switch 2 console was released worldwide today.
Big news for them. And in sports, some unexpected moves. NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers has reportedly signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Didn't see that one coming. And the NBA Finals kickoff tonight. Game 1, Indiana Pacers versus the Oklahoma City Thunder.
All right. Phew.
Oh.
Okay, that was a lot. All packed into just one day, June 5th, 2025.
Looking back at all those sources, you really get that sense of sheer volume, right? The intensity of information hitting us all at once from so many different directions.
Yeah, and this deep dive, I think it really helped pull out those threads we saw at the start. You know, the very public political theater.
Right, the Musk-Trump show.
The really complex, sometimes conflicting economic signals, the grim realities of ongoing global conflicts,
Yeah.
and the significant shifts in international relations, and even, our own domestic security and privacy questions.
And it just underscores that challenge we all face, doesn't it? How do you navigate this ocean of information? What's the signal? What's just noise?
So I guess the question for you, listening, is, what does this all mean for staying informed? Given the mixed economy, the flashy political distractions, the very serious global stuff, where should you focus your attention to really get what's shaping the world right now?
Is the public drama the real story? Or is the real story happening somewhere else? Maybe in those dry policy details, the subtle economic shifts, or those quieter geopolitical moves happening just behind the headlines.
Yeah, something to chew on as you process the day's events.